Asterisk, what exactly did Taehyung's family do to Jungkook's emotional breakdown? Is this the beginning of a big split in BTS? Watch until the end and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for the most emotional and shocking updates about BTS. Asterisk, 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 is this really the end of their friendship? Asterisk, asterisk, a question never imagined would arise between two big names that have been considered inseparable. Asterisk, Kim Taehyung and Jungkook star. But reality is sometimes more cruel than fiction. And that night, yes, that night everything they'd built together for over a decade was shattered with just one sentence from someone who wasn't even part of BTS. Asterisk, asterisk, how could a family, which has always seemed only a shadow on BTS's journey, suddenly become the main characters of the most heartbreaking drama of the year? Who really betrayed? And why is it that only Jungkook seems to bear that emotional burden alone? Asterisk, asterisk, army, you asterisk must asterisk know this truth. Because what happened not only changed the friendship of two friends, but could destroy BTS forever. At first, everything looked fine. Taehyung looked cheerful in his last interview. Jungkook even sang a co-written song during the live broadcast. But what the public doesn't know is, an invitation comes secretly to Jungkook's parents' house, not from Taehyung, but from his mother. The invitation to dinner seemed harmless until that night came. Jungkook sits at the dinner table, waiting with a smile, only to hear a sentence that makes him freeze. You're too emotional for Taehyung's future. We can't let this relationship ruin it any further. Asterisk, it's not just a rejection. That's treason. No camera, no media. But the witness, Jungkook's own father, is finally unable to contain his anger and disappointment. According to an internal source from Jungkook's close family circle, his father even refused to shake hands with Taehyung's family after the statement came out. My son is not a hindrance to anyone. If you didn't think he was good enough, we would never have allowed him to be approached in the first place, the father said in a trembling voice, as reported by the source. Some ARMY members wondered, why did Jungkook suddenly withdraw from some of the group's activities? Why does he look like he's losing his temper, despite smiling at the camera? Now it's all starting to make sense. After the incident, Jungkook began to limit interactions with Taehyung off stage. Even in celebration of Taehyung's birthday, Jungkook only sent short messages and didn't upload anything on social media, an unusual thing given their famous closeness. On a limited occasion, Taehyung tries to give Jungkook an explanation in person. But at that moment, Jungkook just sat quietly, looking at his phone screen, with teary eyes. I don't care if you can forgive them, but don't ask me to pretend I'm not sick, bro, Jungkook said softly. According to a source who saw their conversation in the rehearsal studio, it didn't take long for the silence within the group to turn into awkwardness felt by all the members. Jimin, who usually mediates, finally couldn't stand it and said directly to Taehyung, you should know that what you keep quiet is just as bad as what they do. Asterisk RM, who was known to be calm, even asked for a break from training and reportedly sat alone for almost 2 hours without saying a word. On the one hand, Taehyung wants to keep the peace in his family. On the other hand, he knows very well that Jungkook is not just a co-worker. They grew up together, faced industry pressures together, and supported each other at the lowest points of each other's lives. But the betrayal did not come from him, but from his own blood. And now, people are starting to question. Asterisk, why didn't Taehyung defend Jungkook at the dinner? Asterisk, after a few weeks passed, fans began to realize that there was a code that Jungkook secretly transmitted through lyrics, captions, and small gestures on stage. In the live broadcast, he sang the part of the song that reads asterisk, when your own can't see your worth, strangers love you harder. Asterisk, is it meant for Taehyung's family? ARMY also began to flood comments with hashtags, protect Jungkook family should not hurt Taehyung please speak. At a recent concert in Osaka, it was seen from a backstage camera that Taehyung sat hugging his knees, crying after performing the song Inner Child. The staff said it was the first time they had seen Taehyung cry during a concert in the past 7 years. Is it because of guilt? Before the rumors died down, a handwritten letter allegedly belonging to Jungkook leaked from a staff member's private account. In the letter it is written, I never asked to be accepted. I just want to be appreciated as a human being. But they see me as a wound for Taehyung. Maybe it's true. But the injuries, they did. Asterisk, the ARMY was stunned. Does this mean that Jungkook has lost his trust? Many urged HYBE to provide clarification, but the company actually issued a neutral statement. Asterisk, our artists are given a personal space to restore each other's emotional state. Asterisk, however, the public instead sees this as a veiled admission that something is indeed going on behind the scenes. More than just two best friends at loggerheads, it touches on the deepest foundations of what makes BTS one. Asterisk, togetherness. But if the family of one member can bring down the other, then what does BTS as a family mean? And in the midst of all the unresolved emotional turmoil, another rumor began to surface, a whisper that most of ARMY didn't even want to believe, but slowly gained strength from the members' silence and the small details that had been overlooked. Is this all rooted in a hidden jealousy within Taehyung's family towards Jungkook's position in BTS? This question is not thrown at random. A former stylist who had worked at the beginning of BTS' debut gave an anonymous statement to an editor known to be close to the fandom community. Since then, Jungkook has been the golden boy. Even when not widely known, there was a sarcastic comment from one of the family members about small children who were too big head because of fans. Although never mentioned by name, many suspect the direction of the statement refers to Taehyung's family. This suspicion is reinforced by an incident that is rarely talked about how during an internal HYBE event a few years ago, Taehyung's parents had asked that the spotlight on the solo stage not only be directed at Jungkook. It was considered a small request back then. But now, in the shadow of Jungkook's slow and systematic mental annihilation, everything seemed like puzzle pieces finally coming together. What hurts the most is that Jungkook, even when emotionally sacrificed, still tries to keep Taehyung's good name. On one occasion, a reporter asked in a sarcastic tone, "Are you and Taehyung still close?" Jungkook only smiled a little and replied, "We are all like brothers. And sometimes brothers disappoint each other." That's not an evasive answer. It was a statement full of wounds. And even more astonishing is the fact that after the interview, the management reportedly immediately requested that the video be edited before it was released to the main media. Why should Jungkook's statement be censored? What does HYBE actually cover? Not stopping there, another rumor spread among the concert crew that Jungkook had actually refused to perform on stage with Taehyung in the latest rehearsal. There are even reports that 2 days before the concert, Jungkook reportedly locked himself in the vocal room for nearly 4 hours without speaking to anyone, only playing back a private recorded voice file of unknown content. Was it the voice recording from the dinner that broke his heart? Or an emotional confession that he keeps only to himself? Meanwhile, Taehyung wasn't completely silent. In one of her private posts, which was captured by fans who followed her Finsta account, she wrote an ambiguous sentence that read, "Sometimes you want to shout that it's not you. But if it makes your best friend calm down, maybe silence is the last sacrifice." But is silence a form of protection or an omission? One of the surprising details is that after the event, Jungkook no longer follows the personal accounts of Taehyung's younger brother, with whom he had previously interacted quite often. For some, it may just be a small gesture. But in a world where virtual interactions mirror actual emotional connections, the act of unfollowing is an alarm, and the ARMY hears it very clearly. Some fans even found that in a personal diary video recorded by Jungkook a month ago, there was a cut where he looked directly into the camera and said, "The only thing more painful than losing is knowing that you were never accepted in the first place." After that, he stopped recording and didn't continue. The conspiracy deepens when some fans discover that in the new song Jungkook recorded for his upcoming solo project, there are satirical lyrics. "You smiled in front of me, but whispered my name like a wound behind my back." The words are no longer poetic if the context is known, because many are convinced that the "you" in the song is not a fictitious love couple, but a best friend who allows her family to be toxic in their relationship. More surprisingly, unofficial reports say that one of Taehyung's family members once told management, "We hope he makes friends with people who can provide stability, not intensity." The sentences claim to be intended to describe Jungkook, who is known as a passionate, emotional person and does not hesitate to express his feelings in public. But is it a weakness, or is it a feared strength? While the fans were torn between defending Jungkook and asking for clarification from Taehyung, HYB's side chose silence. But silence in a situation like this is not policy, it's fuel for the fire of suspicion that won't go out on its own. The question is no longer about who is guilty, but can BTS still survive when the trust on which it is based has been undermined not by the media, not by haters, but by the people they trust the most? ARMY, you who have been their greatest strength, now has an important role. Your voice is a mirror that can bring them to their senses, or vice versa. Be a witness to the most heartbreaking emotional breakup in K-pop history. Write your comment right now. Do you believe Taehyung can still fix everything? Or do you think it's too late? Will Jungkook forgive, or will he choose his own path? Don't forget to click like and subscribe to continue following the continuation of the story that may determine the future of BTS. The truth is in sight, but will they dare to reveal it, or continue to hide behind a fake smile? And that night, in the quiet rehearsal room after all the lights were turned off, there was only the sound of Jungkook's shoes touching the wooden floor with heavy steps. She had just walked out of the meeting room with HYB's production team, who asked her to be mature about the situation between herself and Taehyung's family. It's not just this time that Jungkook feels pulled from both sides, between maintaining harmony for the sake of the group's image or being honest about the wounds that are already too deep to be buried. But that night was different. For the first time, Jungkook opens his phone and starts recording his own voice. "You know, I can survive being hated by the world, but not from the man I call brother." The sentence was never published, but someone who heard it, an audio staffer who accidentally received the draft file, admitted that after hearing the full contents, it took him almost a week to process the anger and disappointment voiced by Jungkook, raw like a freshly opened wound. And even more terrifying than the content of the tape is the part where Jungkook asks himself, why do they hate me? Because I was loved by fans first? Because I don't have pure enough blood to be around them? This question not only touches on emotions, but shakes up something much deeper, an insinuation that from the beginning, there was an invisible distance that Taehyung's family instilled in Jungkook. Issues of social status, cultural assumptions, to stereotypes about who is worthy to be in a certain environment, all of it is now questioned by the army with tension that cannot be contained anymore. And just after this issue exploded backstage, an even more astonishing incident occurred. A distant relative of Taehyung's family, who is said to be his maternal aunt, appeared at a community event, then stated publicly that, as a family, we have the right to take care of Taehyung's future. Not all promiscuity should be maintained, especially if it makes him lose control. This sentence was immediately interpreted as a strong blow to Jungkook. It didn't take long. The hashtag "Shame on You" and "We Stand with Jungkook" flooded social media. Fans from all over the world began digging through old archives, trying to find moments that might have long been a sign that Jungkook had been shunned not by Taehyung directly, but by the environment around him. One of the videos from the 2017 variety show shows a scene where the other family members give each other hugs, while Jungkook stands slightly apart. It was considered an ordinary moment. No, it is considered symbolic. The most hurtful was when someone from the agency suggested that Jungkook cut down on overly emotional expressions on stage because some felt it didn't reflect the group's psychological stability. The suggestion was not only demeaning, but felt like a personal attack on the way Jungkook expresses himself, the way he is loved by millions. And in the midst of the storm of pressure, Taehyung still chose silence. Even when fans were waiting for just a statement that his family is not a reflection of him, not a single word came out. For some, it's an attitude of maintaining privacy. For others, it is a form of passive betrayal that is more painful than 1,000 slander. What made the situation even more terrifying was the news that Jimin, known as the keeper of emotional balance between them, in a tea session with the backstage staff said, "Sometimes we just realize who is really dear when all we protect is silent to see you hurt." That sentence, although it does not mention names, is interpreted as a form of deep disappointment with Taehyung's attitude. Even Jin, who is currently focusing on a post-enlistment comeback, is said to be experiencing disappointment so deep that he chose not to appear in one of BTS's latest promotional content, a decision called "Personal Reasons" by HYB. But many believe it is rooted in the group's internal cracks that are increasingly visible to insiders. Meanwhile, rumors from agency circles suggest that HYB has been secretly preparing a strategy of separation of positions between Jungkook and Taehyung in subsequent public activities in order to quell internal unrest. A move that, if true, not only acknowledges that there is a big problem between them, but also that BTS integrity is no longer considered absolute by the agency itself. Now, everyone is on the edge. A Weverse message purportedly to be published by Jungkook next week will reportedly contain an apology if he's too honest, and that he might take longer than expected to trust again. But the fans don't want to hear an apology from the victim. They want the truth from the perpetrator. And if the perpetrator is the system, the family,